Captain Ryan Blake stared at the massive display screen in front of him, watching strange energy readings pulse across the star map. The deep space monitoring station Odyssey floated quietly at the edge of human territory, far from Earth, but close enough to detect anything coming toward the solar system. Ryan had been stationed here for 3 years, and most days were boring. Today was different. "Captain, these readings are off the charts," said Lieutenant Carl Murphy, his station's sensor specialist. Carl had been tracking the energy signatures for 6 hours, and his excitement was clear in his voice. "Whatever is happening out there in the Andromeda sector, it's big. Really big." Ryan walked over to Carl's station and looked at the data. Massive explosions were lighting up space hundreds of light years away. The energy signatures were unlike anything in human records. Ships were dying out there, probably thousands of them. Some kind of war was raging between alien civilizations that humans had never contacted. "Send all this data back to Earth Command," Ryan ordered. "Admiral Morrison needs to see this immediately." Back on Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his office at Earth Defense Command, reviewing the reports from Captain Blake's station. The data was troubling. 2 massive alien fleets were destroying each other in what looked like the biggest space war anyone had ever seen. Morrison had spent his entire career preparing Earth's defenses, but always against unknown threats. Now those threats had names and were busy killing each other. Dr. Lisa Carter knocked on Morrison's door and entered, without waiting for permission. She was Earth's top expert on alien communications, though she had never actually met an alien. Her job was to study intercepted signals and try to understand what other species might be saying. "Admiral, I've been working on those transmissions we picked up from the war zone," she said, placing a data pad on his desk. "I think I've figured out some basic patterns. There are 2 sides fighting. One calls itself the Zephyrian Empire. The other is something like the Corvin Collective. From what I can tell, the Zephyrians are winning." Morrison studied the translation attempts. Even with limited understanding, the scale of destruction was clear. Entire star systems were being consumed by this war. Billions of lives were being lost every day. "What do we know about their technology?" Morrison asked. "Their weapons are far beyond ours," Lisa admitted. "The energy readings suggest they can destroy planets. Their ships are massive, some bigger than our largest cities. If either side decided to come here, we would have no chance of stopping them." Morrison nodded grimly. This was what he had feared for years. Humanity had developed faster than light travel 50 years ago, but Earth's government had chosen isolation. They believed that staying hidden was safer than making contact with alien civilizations. Now it seemed that decision might have saved them from being caught in this galactic war. Senator Kate Williams arrived at Earth Defense Command an hour later for an emergency meeting of the Planetary Security Council. She led the Isolationist Coalition, the political group that had kept Earth separate from galactic affairs for decades. Kate believed strongly that humanity was safer alone. "Admiral Morrison," she said as she entered the briefing room, "I hope you're not thinking of getting involved in this alien conflict. Our policy has always been clear. We stay out of other species' problems." "Senator, this war is bigger than anything we imagined," Morrison replied. "If one side wins completely, they might start looking for new territories to conquer. Earth could be next." Kate shook her head firmly. "The galaxy is huge, Admiral. There are millions of worlds out there. Why would they bother with one small planet like Earth? We have nothing they want." Other council members filed into the room. General Tony Mitchell, Earth's top military strategist, supported Morrison's concerns. Ambassador Claire Davis, who had spent years preparing for eventual first contact, looked worried about the intercepted transmissions. But most of the civilian leaders agreed with Senator Williams. Dr. Carter presented her translation work to the full council. The Zephyrian Empire appeared to be a conquest-based civilization that absorbed other species into their ranks or destroyed them completely. The Corvin Collective seemed to be a defensive alliance of multiple species trying to resist Zephorian expansion. The war had been going on for over 20 years, and the Zephyrians were slowly winning. The transmissions suggest that the Zephyrians have conquered over 300 worlds, Lisa explained. They don't just defeat their enemies. They either enslave entire populations or wipe them out completely. This isn't a normal territorial war. It's systematic destruction of other civilizations. Senator Williams remained unconvinced. Dr. Carter, you admit that your translations are incomplete. We don't really know what's happening out there. What we do know is that this war is hundreds of light years away from Earth. It would take decades for either side to reach us, even if they wanted to. Admiral Morrison tried one more argument. Senator, we should at least prepare our defenses. If nothing else, we need better ships and weapons in case this war comes closer to home. Absolutely not, Kate replied. Military buildup would send the wrong message. If these aliens detect our preparations, they might see us as a threat. Our best protection is staying small and invisible. The vote was predictable. 7 council members supported continued isolation, while only 3 voted for military preparation. Earth would continue its policy of non-interference. The military would keep monitoring the distant war, but no defensive preparations would be authorized. After the meeting, Morrison walked with Dr. Carter back to the communication center. Both were frustrated by the council's decision, but they had their orders. Keep working on those translations, Morrison told her. I want to understand everything we can about these two sides. If this war ever reaches our neighborhood, we need to know who we're dealing with. Lisa nodded and returned to her work. The alien transmissions were difficult to decode, but patterns were becoming clearer. The Zephyrian Empire used rigid, formal communications that suggested a highly organized military hierarchy. The Corvin messages were more varied, indicating cooperation between different species with different languages and cultures. 3 weeks later, Captain Blake was conducting routine patrols around the monitoring station when his sensors detected something unusual. A small object was moving through the outer system, too fast to be a natural asteroid, but too small to be a normal spacecraft. This is strange, he muttered, studying the readings. Lieutenant Murphy, are you seeing this? Carl checked his instruments and frowned. It's definitely artificial, Captain. But it's not using any propulsion system we recognize. No engine signatures, no energy trails. It's just moving. The object was roughly the size of a small shuttle, but it moved through space like it was weightless. It seemed to be scanning the area around the monitoring station, taking readings of human technology and communications. Should we try to intercept it? Asked Lieutenant Sarah Fox, the station's tactical officer. Ryan considered the options. Their patrol ships were faster than most human vessels, but this unknown craft might have weapons they couldn't defend against. More importantly, trying to capture it might reveal Earth's location to whoever had sent it. No, he decided. We watch and record everything, but we don't engage unless it threatens the station directly. The mysterious craft spent 6 hours examining the human outpost from a distance. It recorded their sensor emissions, studied their ship designs, and monitored their communications. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the object accelerated away at impossible speed and vanished into hyperspace. Ryan immediately sent a priority message to Earth Command. Someone had found them. After a century of isolation, humanity had been discovered by an alien civilization. Whether that was good news or bad news remained to be seen. Admiral Morrison received the report and immediately called Dr. Carter to his office. The implications were clear and terrifying. If aliens could send scout ships to human space, they could send warships just as easily. Lisa, I need you to monitor all alien transmissions more closely, he ordered. If that scout ship was from either side in this war, we need to know what they learned about us and what they plan to do next. Dr. Carter worked through the night, scanning every frequency for mentions of a new species or recently discovered world. She found nothing obvious, but the lack of information was almost as worrying as finding bad news would have been. Earth remained isolated and officially neutral, but Admiral Morrison knew that neutrality might not be an option much longer. Someone out there now knew that humanity existed, and in a galaxy at war, that knowledge could be very dangerous. 6 months after the mysterious scout ship disappeared from human space, Captain Ryan Blake was conducting another routine patrol when his sensors detected something much larger approaching the solar system. This time, there was no doubt about what he was seeing. A massive alien spacecraft was heading directly toward Earth, and it was broadcasting signals on multiple frequencies. "Captain, the ship is enormous," reported Lieutenant Carl Murphy, his voice filled with awe and concern. "It's at least 10 times bigger than our largest vessels. But, sir, it's transmitting what looks like peaceful contact protocols." Ryan studied the readings carefully. The alien ship was clearly damaged, with several sections showing energy leaks and structural failures. Burn marks across its hull suggested it had been in recent combat. Most importantly, it was slowing down as it approached, not accelerating for an attack. "Send a message to Earth Command immediately," Ryan ordered. "We have genuine first contact happening right now." Back on Earth, the emergency session of the Planetary Security Council was unlike anything in human history. Admiral Morrison stood before the assembled leaders, presenting real-time data about humanity's first alien visitor. The ship had identified itself as a Corvan collective vessel, one of the sides fighting in the distant Galactic War. Ambassador Claire Davis had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, but she still felt overwhelmed by the reality of it. "Admiral, what are they asking for?" she inquired, trying to keep her voice steady. According to Dr. Carter's preliminary translations, they're requesting sanctuary and asking for alliance against the Zephyrian Empire, Morrison replied. "They claim to be refugees from a recent battle, and they're warning us about an imminent Zephyrian attack on Earth." Senator Kate Williams looked furious. "This is exactly what I warned about. Our isolation policy has been completely destroyed by this war finding us. We should tell them to leave immediately." "Senator, with respect, I don't think we have that option anymore," said General Tony Mitchell. "If this ship found us, others can too. We need information about what we're facing." Dr. Lisa Carter entered the briefing room with updated translation data. Her face was pale but determined. "I've been working on their transmissions for the past 4 hours. The Corvan ship is called the Harmonious Dawn, and it's carrying survivors from a battle that destroyed their entire fleet. They're asking for permission to land and share intelligence about the Zephyrian Empire." "What kind of intelligence?" asked Ambassador Davis. "Military capabilities, ship designs, weapons technology, and tactical information," Lisa explained. "They claim the Zephyrians have already identified Earth as a target for conquest. According to their data, a Zephyrian invasion fleet is already being assembled." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's century of isolation was ending whether they wanted it to or not. Admiral Morrison spoke first. "We need to hear what they have to say. If the Zephyrians are really planning to attack us, we have to know what we're facing." Senator Williams shook her head vigorously. "Absolutely not. Talking to these aliens will only make us a target. We should maintain our neutral position and refuse all contact." "Senator, I think we're already a target," replied General Mitchell. "The question now is whether we face this threat with information or without it." The vote was closer this time, but the Council approved limited contact with the Corvin ship. Ambassador Davis would lead the diplomatic mission, accompanied by Dr. Carter for translation and Commander Alex Harper for security. Commander Harper was Earth's most experienced deep space pilot, though he had never imagined his first alien contact would happen during a galactic war. As he prepared the diplomatic shuttle for launch, he couldn't help feeling that humanity was about to step into something much bigger and more dangerous than they were ready for. The meeting took place aboard the human space station Unity, located in the outer solar system. The Corvin delegation consisted of 3 beings who looked nothing like humans. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Their leader introduced himself as Ambassador Veltarin through a translation device they had brought. "People of Earth," Veltarin began, his translated voice carrying obvious exhaustion and desperation. "We come to you seeking alliance against the greatest evil our galaxy has ever known. The Zephyrian Empire has destroyed countless worlds and enslaved billions of beings. They are coming for your world next." Ambassador Davis tried to maintain diplomatic protocol despite the shocking nature of the conversation. "Ambassador Veltarin, we appreciate your warning, but Earth has maintained neutrality in galactic conflicts. We are not prepared to take sides in your war." "You do not understand," Veltarin replied urgently. "Neutrality is not an option with the Zephyrians. They do not accept surrender. They do not negotiate treaties. They conquer everything they encounter, or they destroy it completely." Dr. Carter was recording every word while also studying the Corvin translation technology. Their communication devices were far more advanced than anything humans had developed, but she was beginning to understand the basic principles. Commander Harper remained alert for any signs of deception or threat, but the Corvin delegation seemed genuinely desperate. Their ship was barely functional, and their crew was obviously exhausted from running and fighting. Engineer Sam Rodriguez, who had been studying the Corvin ship from a distance, joined the meeting with technical analysis. "Ambassador Davis, their vessel shows evidence of weapons that can cut through solid metal like paper. The damage patterns suggest energy weapons far beyond our current technology." Veltarin continued his warning. "The Zephyrian Empire operates on a simple principle. Every species they encounter must join their empire as slaves or be eliminated as a threat. They have been expanding across the galaxy for over 50 years, and they have never been successfully resisted by any single world." "What about the Corvin? Collective?" asked Ambassador Davis. "You've been fighting them for years." "We have delayed them, not defeated them," Veltarin admitted sadly. "The collective includes over 40 different species working together, and we are still losing the war. Your world, alone and unprepared, would fall within days of their arrival." Dr. Carter had been analyzing the Corvin data files during the conversation. "Ambassador, they're sharing detailed information about Zephyrian military capabilities. Ship classes, weapon specifications, tactical doctrines. This intelligence is incredibly valuable." Before Ambassador Davis could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the space station. Commander Harper immediately contacted the Unity's command center. "What's happening up there?" he demanded. "Sir, we have multiple large contacts dropping out of hyperspace," came the urgent reply. "Unknown vessel. Configuration, but they're huge. They're moving toward the station at high speed." Veltarin's expression changed to one of terror and resignation. "They have found us. The Zephyrians are here." Through the station's viewports, the human delegation could see massive alien warships emerging from the darkness of space. The vessels were angular and aggressive-looking, covered in weapon mounts and armored plating. There were at least 20 of them, each one larger than the damaged Corvin ship. "People of Earth," came a transmission in perfect, unaccented English. "You will surrender immediately, and prepare for incorporation into the Zephyrian Empire. Resistance is futile and will result in the complete destruction of your species. Commander. Harper was already moving toward the shuttle bay. Ambassador, we need to evacuate now. Those ships are powering up weapons, but it was too late for the Corvin vessel. Energy beams lanced out from the Zephyrian ships, striking the Harmonious Dawn with devastating force. The alien refugee ship exploded in a brilliant flash, taking all its remaining crew with it. "This is Admiral Morrison to all human vessels," came the voice over the communication system. "We are under attack by unknown alien forces. All ships are authorized to defend themselves." The space battle that followed was humanity's first taste of galactic warfare, and it was terrifying. The Zephyrian ships moved with deadly precision, their weapons cutting through space with casual efficiency. The few human patrol vessels in the area were completely outmatched, but Commander Harper and his pilots fought back anyway. Harper's shuttle was fast and maneuverable, designed for exploration rather than combat, but he used every trick he knew to avoid the alien weapons. The Zephyrian ships seemed surprised by the erratic human flight patterns, as if they were used to fighting more predictable opponents. Unity Station to all vessels, we're detecting some kind of scanning beams from the alien ships, reported the station commander. They're studying our technology and combat tactics. Dr. Carter, still aboard the station with the diplomatic team, was monitoring the Zephyrian communications. They're analyzing everything. Our ship designs, our weapons, our response times. It's like they're collecting data for a future invasion. The battle lasted only 30 minutes before the Zephyrian ships suddenly withdrew. They had accomplished their mission, destroying the Corvin refugees and gathering intelligence about human capabilities. As they jumped back into hyperspace, their leader sent one final transmission. "People of Earth, you have been evaluated and found wanting. Your world will be conquered within 6 months." The transformation of Earth began immediately after the Zephyrian ultimatum. Within days of the Planetary Security Council's war authorization, every major nation on the planet was mobilizing resources for humanity's defense. Admiral Morrison found himself coordinating the largest military buildup in human history, working with leaders who had never imagined they would need to prepare for an alien invasion. Colonel Beth Anderson stood in the center of the new human resistance training center, watching thousands of volunteers learn skills they hoped they would never need to use. Beth had been Earth's top military instructor for 15 years, specializing in unconventional warfare and survival tactics. Now she was training ordinary civilians to fight alien invaders. "The key thing to understand," she told a group of recruits, "is that we don't know exactly what we're facing. The Zephyrians have superior technology, but they've never fought humans before. Our advantage is unpredictability." The recruits came from every background imaginable: teachers, engineers, farmers, students, and retired soldiers all trained together. In the converted facilities, Maria Santos, a civilian coordinator from Brazil, had volunteered to manage the global logistics of the war effort. She worked 18-hour days organizing supply chains that stretched across continents. "Colonel Anderson," Maria said during one of their planning meetings, "we're getting reports from manufacturing centers worldwide. Production of military equipment is ahead of schedule, but we're still years behind what we need for a space war." Beth nodded grimly. "That's why we're not planning to fight a traditional space war. We're preparing for something the Zephyrians won't expect." In the research laboratories scattered across Earth, Dr. Nick Taylor led teams of scientists working around the clock to develop new weapons and defenses. Nick had been studying the wreckage from the destroyed Corvin ship, trying to understand alien technology while developing uniquely human countermeasures. "The Zephyrian energy weapons are incredibly powerful," he explained to his research team. but they're designed for ship-to-ship combat at long range. We need weapons that work differently, weapons they won't be prepared for. Dr. Taylor's teams were developing several revolutionary systems. Kinetic bombardment weapons that used Earth's gravity to accelerate projectiles to devastating speeds. Nanite swarms that could disable alien electronics. Electromagnetic pulse weapons that could disrupt enemy communications and navigation systems. Most promising development was a new type of missile that used human ingenuity rather than raw power. Instead of trying to match Zephyrian energy weapons, the missiles were designed to be unpredictable. They could change course multiple times during flight, split into smaller warheads, or even disguise themselves as space debris. Captain Steve Johnson commanded the construction of humanity's first true warship, the battleship Defiance, built. In the orbital shipyards above Earth, the Defiance incorporated every lesson learned from studying Zephyrian tactics and Corvin technology. She's not the biggest ship ever built, Steve told his engineering crew, but she's designed to survive. What's coming? Multiple redundant systems, armor that can take hits and keep fighting, and weapons that can strike from unexpected angles. The Defiance was actually smaller than most Zephyrian warships, but her design philosophy was completely different. Where? Alien ships seemed to rely on overwhelming firepower and heavy armor. The Defiance was built for mobility and endurance. Her engines could accelerate in any direction. Her weapons could fire while maneuvering, and her crew compartments were designed to keep fighting even if large sections of the ship were damaged out. Steve had studied every piece of intelligence about the Zephyrian attack on Unity Station. The aliens seemed to expect their enemies to fight in formation, exchanging fire at long range until one side was destroyed. Human ship designers were planning something very different. Dr. Lisa Carter had spent months analyzing the communications and tactical data from the Zephyrian fleet. Her work revealed important weaknesses in their military doctrine that could be exploited by human forces. Their command structure is extremely rigid, she explained to Admiral Morrison during a strategy briefing. Orders come from the fleet commander and are passed down through a strict hierarchy. Individual ship captains have very little authority to make independent decisions. What does that mean for us? Morrison asked. It means that if we can disrupt their communications or eliminate their command ships, the rest of their fleet will be paralyzed. They're not used to fighting enemies who adapt quickly to changing situations. This intelligence shaped Earth's entire defensive strategy. Instead of trying to match the Zephyrians in a direct battle, human forces would use guerrilla tactics in space. Hit-and-run attacks, ambushes using asteroid cover, and psychological warfare designed to confuse and demoralize the enemy. The asteroid belt became a massive construction zone as human engineers built hidden bases and weapon platforms throughout. The rocky debris. These installations were designed to look like natural asteroids until they opened fire. The idea was to make the entire solar system a trap for the invading fleet. Commander Alex Harper was assigned to train the first generation of human space fighter pilots. The fighters were small, fast ships designed to swarm around larger vessels like insects attacking a giant. Each fighter carried experimental weapons and was piloted by volunteers who understood they probably wouldn't survive the coming battle. Your job is not to destroy their big ships, Alex told his pilots during training exercises. Your job is to confuse them, damage their sensors, and make them waste ammunition shooting at targets they can't catch. You're buying time for the main fleet to position for decisive strikes. The fighter pilots came from every branch of Earth's military and civilian space programs. They trained in simulators that recreated Zephyrian ship designs and tactics, learning to exploit every weakness the aliens had revealed during their first visit. Meanwhile, refugee ships from the Galactic War continued to arrive in human space. Most were damaged vessels carrying survivors from worlds destroyed by the Zephyrian Empire. These refugees brought crucial intelligence about enemy capabilities and tactics. Dr. Carter worked closely with the refugees to understand Zephyrian psychology and military doctrine. The picture that emerged was troubling but also hopeful. The Zephyrian Empire was incredibly powerful, but it had grown complacent after decades of easy victories. They expect to win quickly, explained a refugee from the Altair system, speaking through translation devices. When they encounter unexpected resistance, their commanders become confused and make mistakes. The problem is that most species surrender before the Zephyrians have time to make those mistakes. This information reinforced Earth's strategy of prolonged resistance rather than decisive battle. Human forces would make the Zephyrians fight the kind of war they were least prepared for. As the months passed, Earth's orbital defenses grew stronger. The moon was converted into a massive fortress, bristling with weapons and sensors. Mars became a backup command center and supply depot. The outer planets hosted long-range sensor arrays that could detect approaching fleets weeks before they arrived, but the most important preparations were happening in the minds of Earth's defenders. Colonel Anderson's training programs were creating a generation of fighters who understood that conventional military thinking wouldn't work against the Zephyrians. "We're not trying to be better soldiers than they are," she told her advanced combat classes. "We're trying to be different soldiers than they've ever faced before. Every time they think they understand what we're doing, we need to do something else." The training emphasized creativity, adaptation, and psychological warfare. Human forces learned to use deception, misdirection, and surprise to overcome superior alien technology. Mock battles were conducted with deliberately unbalanced forces to teach defenders how to win against impossible odds. Dr. Taylor's research teams made breakthrough after breakthrough as the deadline approached. New armor materials that could absorb energy weapon impacts, computer viruses that could be transmitted through alien communication networks, weapons that used physics principles the Zephyrians had never encountered. The most innovative development was a series of smart mines that could hide in space debris and activate only when enemy ships approached. These mines didn't just explode. They transmitted false sensor readings, jammed communications, and created decoy targets to confuse alien targeting systems. Captain Johnson completed the Defiance's construction with 2 months to spare and immediately began training her crew for the coming battle. The ship's design had been tested extensively in simulations, but real combat would be the ultimate test of human engineering and tactics. "We're not just fighting for Earth," Steve told his crew during their final training exercise. "We're fighting to prove that determination and creativity can overcome raw power. If we succeed here, we'll change the balance of the entire galactic war." The crew of the Defiance came from 17 different countries, representing humanity's united effort to survive the coming invasion. They had trained together for months, learning to operate their ship's experimental systems and coordinate with other human forces. Fleet Admiral Kevin Wright watched the Zephyrian invasion fleet approach through the main display of Earth's orbital command center. 237 alien warships moved in perfect formation toward the inner solar system, their massive hulls gleaming with weapons and armor. Kevin had been promoted to overall commander of Earth's defense forces just weeks before the invasion, and now he faced the most important military decision in human history. "Admiral, they're maintaining standard approach formation," reported Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster from her position at the tactical station. Amy commanded Earth's experimental fighter squadron, flying ships that were smaller and faster than anything the Zephyrians had encountered before. Their lead elements will reach the asteroid belt in 6 hours. "Good," Kevin replied calmly. "Let them come. Remember, everyone, we're not trying to stop them at the belt. were trying to make them angry and confused. The Zephyrian fleet commander had sent multiple surrender demands as his ships advanced. Each message was identical, demanding immediate capitulation and threatening complete destruction if humans continued to resist. Kevin had responded to none of them, following the strategy developed during months of preparation. Chief Petty Officer Liz Garcia stood ready in the assault transport Hidden Strike, concealed among the asteroids with his team of boarding specialists. Liz had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in the battle plan, capturing enemy ships from the inside. His team included former Special Forces soldiers, engineers, and computer specialists trained to operate alien technology. "Chief Garcia, are your teams ready?" came Kevin's voice over the communication system. "Ready as we'll ever be, Admiral," Luce replied, checking his equipment one final time. "We've studied every piece of Corvin intelligence about Zephyrian ship layouts. My people know what to do." Dr. Emma Stone prepared her mobile medical units aboard the hospital ship Sanctuary, positioned behind the main battle line. Emma was a combat surgeon and psychologist who had studied alien physiology from the refugee accounts. Her job was to keep human forces fighting, even when casualties mounted. "The important thing to remember," she told her medical teams, "is that we're built differently than most galactic species. Humans can keep fighting with injuries that would disable other beings. Pain tolerance, endurance, and psychological resilience are our advantages." The first contact came when Zephyrian Scout ships entered the asteroid belt and immediately triggered the hidden mine fields. The explosions were spectacular, but caused minimal damage to the heavily armored alien vessels. More importantly, they revealed the locations of human defensive positions, just as Admiral Wright had planned. "Phase 1 is working perfectly," reported Commander Foster has her fighters launched from concealed asteroid bases. "The enemy is responding exactly as predicted. They're targeting our revealed positions and ignoring the hidden ones." The Zephyrian fleet commander reacted to the minefields by ordering a systematic bombardment of the entire asteroid belt. His ships spread out and began destroying asteroids with methodical precision, eliminating what they believed were all human defensive positions. They had no idea that most of the real weapons platforms remained hidden. Amy Foster led her fighter squadron in the first real engagement of the battle. Her 12 ships emerged from asteroid concealment and attacked the nearest Zephyrian destroyer with hit-and-run tactics that completely confused the alien crew. "This is Foster to all fighters," she transmitted as her squadron darted between enemy ships. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to make them waste ammunition and reveal their weapon capabilities." The Zephyrian destroyer responded to the fighter attack by firing massive energy blasts that could have destroyed a human cruiser. But Amy's fighters were too small and fast to hit with weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. The aliens ended up firing dozens of shots without scoring a single hit, while the human fighters gathered detailed intelligence about enemy weapon systems. More importantly, the fighter attack drew other Zephyrian ships away from their formation to help the destroyer. This was exactly what Admiral Wright had hoped for. The rigid enemy formation began to break apart as individual ships pursued what they thought were easy targets. "They're taking the bait," Kevin announced to his command staff. "Signal all hidden platforms. Begin Phase 2. Suddenly, the asteroid belt erupted with weapons, fire from concealed positions the Zephyrians had missed. Kinetic projectiles accelerated. Gravity wells struck enemy ships from unexpected angles. Electromagnetic pulse weapons disrupted alien communications and sensors. Swarms of nanite-laden missiles created chaos among the invading fleet. The Zephyrian fleet commander found himself fighting an enemy that refused to behave according to standard military doctrine. Instead of engaging in formal ship-to-ship combat, the humans were using every dirty trick they could think of. Fake distress signals lured enemy ships into trap zones. Debris fields hid weapons platforms that activated only when enemy ships passed directly over them. Chief Garcia's boarding teams struck during the confusion of the asteroid battle. Using small stealth ships, they approached damaged enemy vessels and cut their way inside through hull breaches caused by human weapons. Luis led the first boarding action personally, fighting his way to the bridge of a Zephyrian heavy cruiser. A ship layout matches the refugee intelligence, he reported, as his team secured the alien bridge. But their security systems are more advanced than expected. We need more time to take control. The hand-to-hand combat inside the Zephyrian ship revealed another human advantage. The aliens were physically stronger than humans, but they seemed unprepared for the ferocity and determination of human soldiers fighting for their home world. Luis and his team fought with a desperation that the Zephyrians had never encountered. These beings fight like cornered animals, transmitted a Zephyrian officer before Luis's team silenced his communication station. They refused to retreat even when facing certain death. Dr. Stone's medical teams were busy treating casualties from the boarding actions and fighter squadrons. Her mobile surgical units moved throughout the battle zone, rescuing wounded humans and studying captured alien equipment. What she discovered confirmed the psychological warfare theory. Admiral Wright, the Zephyrian prisoners we've captured are showing signs of severe stress, she reported. Their species isn't psychologically prepared for prolonged combat. They expect quick victories, and when battles drag on, their performance deteriorates rapidly. This intelligence was immediately transmitted to all human units. The key to victory was making the battle last as long as possible while maintaining human morale and fighting effectiveness. The main Zephyrian fleet finally reached the inner solar system after fighting through the asteroid belt for 8 hours. They had destroyed most of the human defensive positions they could find, but their ammunition reserves were depleted and their formation was scattered. More importantly, they had lost 3 ships to human boarding actions and suffered damage to dozens of others. Admiral Wright positioned the main human battle fleet between Earth and the Moon, using both celestial bodies as cover and support bases. The human ships were arranged in small groups rather than traditional formations, making it impossible for the Zephyrians to target them with massed fire. "This is it," Kevin announced to all human forces. "They're coming for Earth now, and we're going to show them what happens when you threaten humanity's home." The battle for Earth began when the first Zephyrian ships entered lunar orbit and found themselves facing an enemy that fought unlike anything in their experience. Captain Steve Johnson's battleship, Defiance, led the defense, using her superior maneuverability to stay one step ahead of enemy targeting systems. "All ships, remember the plan," Steve transmitted to the human fleet. "We don't trade shots at long range. We get close, hit hard, and move before they can respond." The Defiance darted between larger enemy ships, firing her experimental weapons at point-blank range before accelerating away. Her kinetic projectiles punched through Zephyrian armor that was designed to absorb energy weapons. Her electromagnetic pulse cannon disrupted enemy navigation systems, causing several collisions within the alien fleet. Amy Foster's fighters swarmed around the largest Zephyrian ships like angry insects, targeting their communication arrays and sensor clusters. The aliens found themselves flying blind and unable to coordinate their attacks effectively. "Admiral, we're receiving scattered transmissions from the enemy fleet," reported Dr. Carter from her communication monitoring station. "Their fleet commander is demanding explanations for why the battle is taking so long. Individual ship captains are requesting permission to withdraw and regroup." This was the moment Admiral Wright had been waiting for. The rigid Zephyrian command structure was beginning to crack under the pressure of fighting an unpredictable enemy. "Signal Chief Garcia," Kevin ordered. Time for the final phase. Luis Garcia and his boarding specialists had been working inside captured Zephyrian ships throughout the battle, learning to operate alien technology and preparing for the decisive moment. When Admiral Wright's signal came, they were ready. All boarding teams, execute Operation Trojan Horse, Luis transmitted to his scattered units. President John Martinez stood before the United Earth Assembly, looking out at representatives from every nation on the planet. 3 months had passed since humanity's victory over the Zephyrian invasion fleet, and the captured alien intelligence had revealed the true scope of the Galactic War. John faced the most important decision in human history, whether Earth would remain safely isolated or venture into the galaxy to help other species fighting for their freedom. The information we've gathered from captured Zephyrian ships changes everything, John announced to the assembled delegates. Their empire controls over 800 worlds, enslaving billions of beings across the galaxy. But our victory has triggered something unexpected. Resistance movements on dozens of worlds are rising up, believing that freedom is finally possible. Admiral Rachel Thompson sat in the front row, reviewing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Rachel had been chosen to command humanity's first interstellar expeditionary force, a fleet built around captured and reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology. The ships were still recognizably human in their tactical thinking, but now they had the range and firepower to fight anywhere in the galaxy. Mr. President, Rachel said when called upon, the refugees in our system are reporting coordinated uprisings on 17 different worlds. These species have been enslaved for decades, but they're willing to fight now because they've seen that the Zephyrians can be defeated. Major Derek Collins had spent the months since the invasion training a new type of military unit, the Human Liberation Corps. Derek's soldiers were specialists in guerrilla warfare, unconventional tactics, and the kind of creative thinking that had won the battle for Earth. Their mission was to teach other species how to fight like humans. The key insight from our victory, Derek explained to his assembled officers, is that the Zephyrians are psychologically unprepared for prolonged resistance. They expect quick surrender or quick victory. When neither happens, their command structure breaks down. Specialist Tina Brooks worked in the new Galactic Communications Center, coordinating with resistance movements across dozens of star systems. Tina had learned to operate captured Zephyrian communication equipment, allowing her to establish contact with rebel groups that had been isolated for years. We're receiving messages from freedom fighters on 43 different worlds, she reported during the daily intelligence briefing. They're asking for military advisors, weapons, and tactical support. Most importantly, they're asking for hope that this war can actually be won. The debate in the Earth Assembly lasted for days. Some delegates argued that humanity should focus on defending Earth and leave the Galactic War to other species. Others insisted that the Zephyrian Empire would never leave Earth alone unless it was completely defeated. Senator Kate Williams, who had opposed military involvement from the beginning, made one final argument for isolation. Mr. President, we've proven that Earth can defend itself. Why should we risk human lives fighting for alien worlds we've never seen? President Martinez considered all the arguments before making his decision. Senator Williams, 3 months ago, the Zephyrians told us that resistance was futile. Today, resistance movements across the galaxy are proving them wrong. If we don't help those movements succeed, we'll eventually face the entire Zephyrian Empire alone. The vote was closer than expected, but the Assembly approved humanity's entry into the Galactic War. Admiral Thompson would lead a fleet of 30 ships to support the most promising resistance movements, while Major Collins would deploy his Liberation Corps to train alien freedom fighters. The first human interstellar mission launched 6 weeks later. Admiral Thompson's flagship was the cruiser Liberator, built around a captured Zephyrian hull but modified with human tactical innovations. The ship could jump between star systems using alien hyperdrive technology, but it fought using human strategies that had proven effective against rigid military thinking. "Our mission is not conquest," Rachel announced to her fleet as they prepared to leave the solar system. "We're going to teach the galaxy what we learned defending Earth. Freedom is worth fighting for, and no empire is too powerful to resist if people are willing to stand together." The first target was the Vega system, where a species called the Altarians had been enslaved for 30 years. Intelligence from refugee ships indicated that a resistance movement was active on 3 of the system's 4 inhabited worlds. But they lacked the weapons and coordination to challenge Zephyrian occupation forces effectively. Major Collins and his Liberation Corps arrived at Vega aboard fast transport ships, using stealth technology to avoid Zephyrian patrols. Derek's team included specialists in explosives, communications, computer warfare, and psychological operations. Their job was to turn scattered resistance groups into an effective fighting force. "The Altarians are naturally peaceful," Derek explained to his team as they prepared to make contact with the rebels. "They've been trying to resist using their own cultural methods, which emphasize consensus and patience. We need to teach them that sometimes quick, decisive action is the only way to survive." The first meeting between human advisors and Altarian resistance leaders took place in hidden caves beneath the planet's capital city. The aliens were thin, graceful beings with large eyes and delicate hands, clearly evolved for intelligence rather than physical combat. "Humans of Earth," said the resistance leader through a translation device, "we have heard of your victory against the Zephyrian fleet. Can you teach us to fight as you fought?" Derek studied the alien rebels carefully. They were brave and determined, but they had been conditioned by decades of slavery to avoid direct confrontation. "We can teach you tactics and strategy," he replied, "but the most important thing we can teach you is that the Zephyrians can be beaten if you're willing to think differently than they expect." Meanwhile, Admiral Thompson's fleet engaged the Zephyrian occupation forces in space above the Altarian worlds. The human ships used the same hit-and-run tactics that had worked in the battle for Earth, striking at enemy vessels and withdrawing before the aliens could respond effectively. Specialist Brooks established communication networks that allowed resistance cells on different worlds to coordinate their attacks for the first time in decades. Using captured Zephyrian equipment, she created secure channels that the occupation forces couldn't monitor or jam. "This is incredible," one Altarian rebel transmitted after his first coordinated strike. "We've been fighting alone for so long. We forgot what it felt like to be part of something larger." The liberation of the Vega system took 3 months, but the psychological impact was immediate and far-reaching. Word spread throughout the galaxy that humans were actively supporting resistance movements, and that the Zephyrian Empire could be defeated with proper tactics and coordination. Admiral Thompson received requests for assistance from rebel groups on dozens of worlds. Each liberation mission was different, requiring new tactics and strategies, but the basic human approach remained the same. Teach local fighters to be unpredictable, help them coordinate their efforts, and never give the Zephyrians time to establish. Stable control. Major Collins found that different alien species had different natural advantages in guerrilla warfare. The rock-dwelling Granzites were masters of underground combat. The gas giant inhabitants called Cloudwalkers could strike from 3-dimensional aerial positions that confused ground-based enemies. The aquatic Deepshapers could sabotage Zephyrian installations from underwater approaches that alien security systems weren't designed to detect. "Every species has something unique to offer," Derek reported to Earth during one of his regular briefings. "Our job isn't to make them fight like humans. It's to help them fight like themselves, but with human tactical principles." The Zephyrian Empire's response was predictable and counterproductive. They increased security measures on occupied worlds, which only made local populations more resentful. They sent larger garrison forces to trouble spots, which meant pulling ships away from other defensive positions. Most importantly, they tried to fight the growing rebellion using the same rigid tactics that had failed against Earth. Dr. Emma Stone accompanied many of the liberation missions, studying how different species responded to combat stress and developing psychological warfare techniques tailored to Zephyrian weaknesses. Her research revealed that the alien empire's greatest vulnerability was their inability to adapt to unexpected situations. The Zephyrians have been winning through intimidation for so long that they've forgotten how to actually fight, she reported. When their enemies refuse to be intimidated, they don't know what to do next. Specialist Tina Rooks coordinated what became known as the galaxy-wide uprising, simultaneous rebellions on over 50 worlds, timed to overwhelm Zephyrian response capabilities. The rebels used human-designed communication codes and tactics that allowed them to strike at exactly the same moment across thousands of light years. "This is Resistance Command to all Liberation Forces," Tina transmitted on the designated day. "Operation Freedom Dawn is now active. Show the galaxy that tyranny has no place among free peoples." The coordinated uprising succeeded beyond anyone's expectations.